All right, let's just dive right into this explainer. You know that feeling, that constant, exhausting hum of anxiety? You've probably tried it all, right? The deep breathing apps, the expensive bubble baths, those positive affirmations, and literally felt nothing. But what happens when that conventional relaxation advice completely fails us? What happens when your body is basically stuck in this state of chronic stress, and actually trying to calm down just makes you feel worse? Well, today, we are decoding the exact science of a dysregulated nervous system. So here's our roadmap for today. First up, we'll look at the anatomy of the alarm. Then, the roots of dysregulation, the hypersensitive trap, rewiring your biological response, and finally, some real habits for a reset. Let's get into it.
So why exactly does your brain feel totally panicked even when you are perfectly safe? I mean, picture this. You're just sitting on your couch, absolutely nothing is wrong, yet your heart is racing, and you've got this deep, unshakable sense of dread. If you live in this state of chronic hypervigilance, I really want you to hear this loud and clear. This exhaustion, it is not a character flaw. You aren't failing at relaxing. What you're actually experiencing is a mechanical misfire in your biology. Your system just simply never got the signal to power down.
To really understand this, we need to completely shift our perspective. Dr. Nadine Barkeras, an amazing pioneering researcher and physician, perfectly hits the nail on the head here. She says, trauma is the biological response to overwhelming stress. It's actually the body's reaction to that stress. Think about that for a second. We so often think of trauma as the terrible event itself, but the science shows us that trauma is actually the physical, biological response that gets physically trapped inside your body long after that event is actually passed.
All right, Section 1, Anatomy of the Alarm, how your brain triggers survival mode.
Now take a look at the amygdala. That's your brain's emotional processing center. When it perceives danger, it absolutely does not wait around for your logical brain to catch up. Nope. It instantly shoots a distress signal straight to your hypothalamus, which is basically the command center. And this wiring is so incredibly fast, so efficient, that your body starts reacting before your brain's visual centers have even fully processed the danger. Seriously, this is exactly why you can jump out of the way of a speeding car before you consciously even register what you're doing.
Okay, so once that alarm sounds, your autonomic nervous system takes the wheel. Think of it kind of like a car. Your sympathetic nervous system, that's the gas pedal. It pumps you full of adrenaline and cortisol, triggering that intense fight-or-flight energy. Your heart pounds, airways open up, blood rushes straight to your muscles. But on the flip side, the parasympathetic nervous system is the brakes. It promotes that beautiful rest and digest response that calms everything down once the danger is gone. But what happens if the brakes just stop working?
Which brings us to Section 2. The roots of dysregulation, childhood trauma, and the biological teeter-totter.
This actually builds on a truly startling statistic from the CDC. Get this, 1 in 6 individuals has experienced 4 or more adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs. This includes things like abuse, neglect, or growing up in a household with severe mental illness or substance dependence. And because these events happen when our biology is incredibly plastic and still developing, they quite literally wire the brain to respond to stress differently going forward.
Dr. Barkeras uses this fantastic teeter-totter metaphor to explain what's going on here. Imagine a teeter-totter. You've got stress on one side and calming buffering mechanisms on the other. Normally, the fulcrum, the pivot point, is right dead in the middle. But if you experience trauma when you're young, that fulcrum physically shifts. Your system becomes biologically hardwired for survival. So as an adult, this means your teeter-totter requires way more safe, nurturing, intentional buffering. Things like deep connections, therapy, or physiological tools literally just to find the same baseline balance as someone else.
And hey, if you ever doubt the power of this mind-body connection, consider this incredible micro-story from Dr. Barkeras' own clinic. She treated a 7-year-old boy who had experienced severe trauma when he was 4. Well, when he walked into her office at age 7, his height and weight were still at the 50th percentile for a 4-year-old. Think about that. His stress hormones were so chronically elevated that they literally arrested his physical growth. But by providing him with safe, therapeutic buffering, his stress hormones finally normalized, and he actually began to grow again. The body truly remembers.
All right, moving on to Section 3, the hypersensitive trap. why trying too hard to calm down backfires.
So, when your nervous system completely loses its baseline of calm, you essentially live 24/7 on the edge of activation. This is what we call a sensitized system. You aren't just occasionally spiking into anxiety from a place of peace. The spike is literally where you live. And this creates some really surprising physical symptoms. We're talking constant physical bracing, unexplainable dizziness, waking up with a racing heart before you've even opened your eyes, and terrifying intrusive thoughts. Your brain basically starts reading totally normal bodily sensations as absolute proof of immediate danger.
So the absolutely crucial point here is this. When you feel that panic and you immediately reach for a calming tool, like frantic deep breathing or obsessively checking your pulse, you are acting out of pure desperation. Your brain is incredibly smart, but let's be honest, it's also a little easily confused. It reads that frantic energy and thinks, wow, we are breathing really hard to fix this. There must be a literal tiger in the living room. Trying way too hard to force the calm simply gives your brain more evidence that the alarm should absolutely keep ringing.
This leads us to Section 4, rewiring your biological response, changing your relationship to symptoms.
Now this is where the real work happens. This is where you start taking your power back. The old way is what most of us naturally do, right? We feel anxiety, so we cancel our plans, we shrink our lives down, we obsessively Google our symptoms at 2 in the morning, and we make healing our full-time job. But the new way, it's incredibly empowering. It's all about modeling safety through your actual behavior. If anxiety hits you out of nowhere, don't stop what you're doing. Take your anxiety with you to pick up the kids. Let your heart race while you fold the laundry. By continuing your normal, everyday tasks alongside the panic, you behaviorally teach your nervous system, see, we are doing this, and we aren't dying. This is actually safe.
And finally, Section 5, Habits for a Reset, Building Physiological Resilience. I'd like you to meet the vagus nerve. This is the longest cranial nerve in your entire body. It's this massive wandering network that goes from your brainstem all the way down through your heart, your lungs, and right into your abdomen. It is essentially the primary superhighway for your parasympathetic nervous system. It acts as your system's main brake pedal. When we stimulate this nerve, we mechanically force the body to calm down.
And one of the absolute fastest ways to engage those brakes is something called the physiological sigh. This has been studied heavily by researchers over at Stanford University, and it's incredibly simple to do right now. Just take 2 quick inhales through your nose, followed by 1 long exhale out through your mouth. When we are chronically stressed, our breathing gets shallow and carbon dioxide builds up. This 30-second tool rapidly offloads that stale air and mechanically forces your heart rate to decrease. You don't need to try and change your anxious thoughts, you just change your breath.
Here's a really brilliant summary of daily habits you can use to rebuild your resilience. For instance, Zone 2 cardio, like a nice brisk walk, actively strengthens your vagal tone, helping you recover from stress a lot faster. Or consider cold exposure. Just 11 minutes a week actually trains your body to handle adrenaline spikes without panicking. Then there are physical movements, like Zen Swings, or literally just shaking out your limbs, which actively release that trapped physical bracing we talked about. And finally, closing open loops, like finally answering that lingering email, defeats the psychological Zeigarnik effect, clearing out all those background mental alarms. Notice what these all have in common. None of them rely on willpower or positive thinking. They are purely physical inputs designed to rewrite your biology. But listen, all the physical tools in the world still need an emotional foundation. Dr. Burke Harris shares that the ultimate buffering technique, the most profound way to truly reset your system, is giving yourself what she calls a corrective experience. If you lacked a safe, regulating presence in your past, the goal right now is for adult you to show up for yourself, to sit with the panic, not judge it, and simply say to your own body, I am here. You actually become the safe, regulated presence you've been waiting for. Understanding this science just completely shifts the power dynamic. You are not broken. Your biology is just working a little too much overtime to protect you, and you have the power to gently teach it to stand down. So I'll leave you with this provocative thought. What physical evidence of safety will you give your body today? I challenge you to choose just one small, empowering habit from our toolkit and begin your reset today.